My name is Richa Danda. I work as a product marketing manager for application management products at VMware. And here's my colleague, Murthy.
Hi, I'm Murthy Prakasam. I work in the cloud infrastructure team at VMware as well.
So thank you for joining us for this session, which is we'll walk you through what it takes what it takes to move from infrastructure to applications, and why is it the next step in your cloud journey. So let's get started. Before we get started, I'd like to share that this session we will be sharing some of the feature functionality which is not available currently in the market. And we don't have any set timelines for the delivery of those features and functions. And we would not be discussing any pricing details for those features and functions. So what is going on in the market? There is a time to market challenge in this slide, which we want to depict. If you look at the pace of innovation in the past few decades, the previous generation probably did not see innovation. Maybe they saw one innovation in their entire lifetime, or maximum two. People who witnessed radio as innovation in their lifetime, they didn't get to see TV for a very long time period. It took 40 years for radio to gain 50 million users. And it took 13 years for television to get that many users. And if we go further down, the scale that the new innovations are reaching is growing. At the same time, the pace at which they're gaining that scalability has been reduced dramatically. So if we go from internet took 4 years to get 50 million users, and if we look between Facebook and Google Plus took only 88 days. And so from 40 years to 88 days, and there might be some innovation that's happening in some garage today, which will become the innovation of the year next year, which we probably don't even know today, and get 50 million users in maybe 40 days. So how many of you have actually have used the services of the logos of the companies that are here? And how many of you used them 10 years back? Anyone? And how many do you think that these services today have changed our life a lot, and we would not think of our life without these services? So, and in terms of competition, what does it mean for the companies that have existed in the past? So if it takes 88 days for Google to get 50 million users and become a competitive threat to Facebook, which had brought a new concept in the market, which was social media. What does it tell us? It tells us that the competitive advantages that exist today they will have a very shorter life cycle in the market. If you look at the services that these companies provide, they are at no charge to the consumer. So what are the current companies competing against? The solutions and the services that are for the consumer available at no cost. So business and class companies are going to market at blazing speeds. So that's the crux. So in this paradigm, the time to market becomes very, very critical for each and every company that's out there in the market. So if business is growing at that pace, what does it mean for IT? It is putting a lot of pressure, and it's putting strict demands of IT to deliver those services and deliver innovation. Are IT organizations aligned to deliver innovation at the pace that's required in the market? So let's look at the different roles that exist in the market and what they are chartered to do. If you look at the CIOs, they are chartered to deliver innovation, but at the same time, it should not be very risky for the company. At the same time, it should decrease CAPEX as well as OPEX. If you look at the development teams are chartered to develop new features, new functions, and deliver innovation at the faster pace. Their main charter is to the speed, but are they aligned with operations, which are very change-averse, who are chartered to manage the quality of service? Now, they are completely going in different directions. We just went through what is required to survive in the business, which was efficiency, agility, and innovation, and time to market. And the way the IT organizations are aligned, that is basically completely conflicting with the charter of the overall organization. So why are these organizations not delivering at the pace that they need to deliver? In this chart, we will go through what are their challenges of each of the departments, be it infrastructure, app provisioning, or monitoring. What are their challenges, and why are they not able to deliver? With that, I'll share the task with Murthy, and he's going to walk us through the infrastructure provisioning process.
So, that's fine. So, I mean, basically, you guys are probably familiar with this, that infrastructure provisioning is still a fairly slow process. And this is actually something Steve Herod mentioned in a keynote on Monday, that you actually find even with virtualization, we kind of solved part of the problem of getting the server to kind of come up as quickly as possible. But you actually to develop a full-fledged application, you need a lot more than just a server. You need the storage, you need networking, you need a whole host of infrastructure services. And so when we actually ask customers how long it takes to deliver complete infrastructure and have that fully provisioned, it can take anywhere from a day to 4 weeks. Now, if you look at kind of what Richo was talking about in terms of these companies that are building products and getting them out to market very quickly, they're probably not waiting 4 weeks for infrastructure. And so to really address the overall problem around time to market, one of those things that you need to get your arms around is accelerating the provisioning of infrastructure.
So let's look at what traditional app provisioning involves. So app provisioning, from the experience that VMware has based on the beta customers and customer interviews, it takes them 4 to 8 weeks as of now to deploy an app. So what do they do during that? Set up infrastructure, set up middleware, deploy application, and it involves multiple people, long processes. And what happens in app monitoring? Deployment and operations teams are separated. They have different charters, they work differently, and they don't know what's happening in each other's teams. So they only get involved together when something goes wrong, something is not working, but some performance goes bad. So at that point in time, the discussions start happening, and then at that point in time, they work together to find out what can be done. So basically, deployment is slow, and monitoring is more reactive instead of proactive. So again, Murthy will walk us through what in nutshell it means in terms of infrastructure provisioning.
Yeah, so if you look at sort of you just deep dive into what we talked about before, I mean, what usually you find in a lot of development environments is the developers are kind of queued up for their demands of infrastructure. So you have, large development teams who are, and the other thing is that they're all looking for usually the same type of infrastructure. So it's not like every request is actually that different from every other request. But the idea that getting that full set of infrastructure to do development and deployment can end up actually being one of the biggest bottlenecks. And so as you think about an environment where literally every minute of time waiting for anything, whether it's infrastructure or any other process in this life cycle, that's literally an opportunity cost for the business, because as things are generally accelerating, we're literally getting to the point where minutes can make a difference. And so the consequence of this now, if you look at sort of a lot of development teams, they're increasingly being measured on their overall SDLC time. And so those guys, they're saying, well, gee, if my internal IT team isn't going to get me infrastructure as quickly as possible, maybe I should go find a different provider, because there are, frankly, a lot of providers now that are able to provide these services in a very, very quick amount of time. And so that's another reason to really think about the infrastructure layer, because it is a matter of being competitive in serving the development community and ultimately serving the higher business purpose of getting your applications out as quickly as possible.
Thank you. So let's look at today's application landscape. Applications in the past were created on physical infrastructure. They were tightly tied to the physical infrastructure. It was a very bottoms-up approach. You first buy the physical infrastructure and what runs on that, and then on that basis, an app was created. And it was more of a waterfall development process, which took 6 to 9 months. So the way we just looked at a chart where we said Google Plus got 50 million users in 88 days. Does any business today have the time to develop any product in 6 to 9 months? Probably by the time you develop that product, there'll be no market. Somebody else would have taken that market by a storm. And in the past, the resources were very static. They were all tied to physical infrastructure. There were not multiple different types of infrastructures available in the market. Compute was very expensive. So once you've bought something, you will work on it for quite some time. And number of users that for those services or products that exist that technology provided were limited. What's happening in the applications of today? What's needed now? They are developed using agile methodologies. So there are multiple sprints that are delivered. Deployment so is continuous. It's dynamic resourcing. So it's not only one physical infrastructure. People have private, public, hybrid kind of environments, or infrastructure as service providers like Amazon's. It spans across data centers and clouds. The compute cost has completely gone down, so infrastructure is becoming more of a commodity. So it goes back to the point what Murthy shared, that it is very important for internal IT teams who are providing infrastructure to consider the competition, the threat that they have from the likes of Amazon. They need to work and deliver the infrastructure to application teams at the same pace at which external vendors are providing it. And the current applications have millions of users very quickly. So if you cannot scale those applications very quickly at the pace at which consumer base is increasing, it pretty much fails the business. So in a nutshell, in the past, from infrastructure to application to monitoring, everything was pretty manual. It was all basically meant for physical infrastructure. It was the processes, management tools, organizational structure, everything was created for that physical environment. I'll give you an example of telecom products now. So how many of you used the smartphones maybe 15 years back? No one. Now, do you think the services that are provided by smartphones today, if we try to use them on the previous generation phones, they'll provide the same kind of experience? No. So we use them every day. It requires a different approach. It requires a different kind of hardware. It requires different kinds of services to be delivered for those organizations, for the consumers. So if we look at, it's the same way in terms of technology. The processes, the IT alignment, and the tools that were meant for physical infrastructure, they break in cloud. So everything needs to be aligned with the current business dynamism as well as for cloud. So it needs to have a top-down approach that we start with what we need to provide, and then we decide what infrastructure we need, and that infrastructure needs to be available at a very fast pace. So with cloud and the way things are changing, there are two emerging concepts that are coming: how the companies and how the IT organizations need to work in cloud. So this is what we call cloud operating model. In cloud, what we see and what we think the way organizations would be aligned with will be that there are two clear horizontal roles. One, cloud ops teams, which are chartered to deliver infrastructure. They are cloud providers to the application teams. They would be providing infrastructure, and they would be managing the performance, capacity, configuration, and security of that infrastructure. And they would be measured with the likes of Amazon, that how they are doing vis-a-vis that competition. And then there is another role, which is application teams, who would be chartered for creating applications faster, delivering those applications, and measuring and managing the performance, availability, and usage and cost of those applications. At the same time, when both these separate teams within the company are working, at the same time, they cannot work completely in isolation. So what is needed is application-aware infrastructure, where infrastructure teams just need to make sure that they're providing enough compute power, the supporting infrastructure that they're providing is appropriate for the demand of the application, and the application is running the right way. And at the same time, application teams need some kind of KPIs. They don't need to exactly know the deeper down details of infrastructure performance. They just need to know that when they are looking for certain kind of infrastructure and the demand of infrastructure for that specific application, they are getting that. Something that we talked about, that how deployment and monitoring processes are broken in current organizations. So with that, there's an emerging concept of DevOps, that development and operations teams, app operations teams, need to work hand in hand. This concept actually came as a result of the organizations that cannot tolerate the ramifications of too divisions working completely in isolation from each other and chartered with conflicting priorities. So they need to have a continuous process. They need to optimize the process that works for the end customer. So what is needed in this scenario? That all the teams, be it CIO, operations, or development, infrastructure, apps, and operations, everybody working in alignment to deliver what business needs: agility, innovation, and efficiency. Now with that, we've set the stage that what is happening in the market, what is it leading to for IT organizations. Now next, what we are going to do is share with you that what traditional processes did, how we can move away from them and do what is needed to be done in current paradigm, what these new approaches are to infrastructure provisioning and applications management. With that, Murthy will walk us through the infrastructure provisioning process.
Great. So what we're doing here, and again, some of this was touched upon in the keynote on Monday, but the idea of how we accelerate infrastructure provisioning is by separating essentially the supply of infrastructure from the demand for it. Because when you think about historically, one of the things that has been one of the largest sources of complexity is the idea that applications and infrastructure are bound in a very tight way. So that itself is where a lot of the problems of sort of slower time to market come from. And so our model is basically to say, let's take your infrastructure, and this is going to be software-defined infrastructure. You hear that phrase quite a bit. And have that be offered as virtual data centers. So a virtual data center is just, it's a supply of resources. And it's not just the compute, it's the storage, it's the networking, it's security. It's everything that you need to actually have complete infrastructure and have that wrapped up as a virtual data center. And you could have multiple virtual data centers that are operating at different SLAs. Maybe you have your slow virtual data center with the more efficient hardware that you have. And maybe there's a higher performance virtual data center. But it basically become targets for deployment for all the applications that you're building. And then the apps themselves can be stored in these what we call vApp catalogs. And these are multi-tier applications. And so you can have entire multi-tier apps that can be deployed flexibly into the virtual data centers. And because we're doing this binding on demand, that's actually what enables the infrastructure to be sort of so-called delivered in a matter of minutes, because you're not actually having to do all this setup and go through these complicated builds and deploy processes. You're basically just doing the deployment on demand, on the fly, and the infrastructure is pulled in as it is needed. And so that enables you to actually get this whole kind of provisioning process down to a matter of minutes. So I'll go through a couple of features that we have in our technology. So as I mentioned, there's the whole virtual data center concept. So virtual data center, it's a logical container. It provides all of the complete infrastructure services that you need. And it basically enables a central IT team to be able to provision that complete set out to their delegated teams, in this case, probably a development or a build or release team. Lots of benefits from it. Obviously, it's sort of lower CAPEX because you're going to get higher utilization of your hardware. Everything's happening at the software layer. It can be tiered by SLAs, and obviously the biggest benefit there is the faster access. We also have some really, really unique technologies that make this even more faster. So we have this thing called fast provisioning, which is probably the best name for a feature to actually say what it does. So basically what we do is it's sort of like a deduplication feature. So as you have these VMs that are being provisioned for these deployments that you're doing, if you have, in many cases, the same VM being replicated, instead of having to store each of those copies separately, and then you end up having to use up all that storage, we actually have this kind of dedupe function where the second, third, fourth copies are just linked back to that first original template. And so what that means is that you only have to really care about the deltas for each of those different user sessions. And so what that does is it further accelerates provisioning time. And so we've actually clocked in our own labs provisioning happening in a matter of seconds, because you're not actually waiting for your storage to have to provision this large footprint. You can basically just have this pointer back to the original template and you're ready to go. And then of course from a cost standpoint, you get further storage cost reductions as well. So there's some unique technologies that we're using to further enable that, it's not just a matter of minutes, maybe even getting more aggressive than that. And so all this is really wrapped up in our vCloud Director product. And so vCloud Director is, again, it's about delivering that complete set of infrastructure services through the virtual data centers. It's enabling that infrastructure to be consumed in a matter of minutes by leveraging some of those unique virtualization capabilities. And then also, depending on your environment, what kind of software you're developing, you might care about security and controls. I've seen customers where, the dev team, they actually work on things that they sort of don't want other departments to be aware of. So if you need to give them isolated networks and provide, security services, all of that is provided at a software layer as well. So there's a lot of capabilities there that ultimately end up kind of helping on the transformation of speed and productivity. I'll hand it back over here.
So now Murthy shared with us what is the new approach to provision infrastructure. This journey started maybe a decade ago when all the organizations were realizing how infrastructure is becoming expensive and how it's not that agile. But have we got the agility that we need in the market by just making infrastructure as a service, by providing infrastructure as a service? Recently, Gartner conducted a survey, and this survey was basically asking the respondents to share if they think that they've gained the agility by leveraging cloud infrastructure or virtualization. So most of the respondents agree that they're satisfied with what virtualization did for them in terms of reducing data center floor space, energy costs, and thermal output. However, expectations for an overall reduction in hardware, capital expenditure, and mainly increased application deployment speed and efficiency have not been fully met. So this basically tells us that there needs to be a holistic approach, which starts with infrastructure, but also takes us to applications and the next steps to gain the actual agility that's needed in the market. And to add to that, cloud applications in the past, the applications that were deployed on cloud or on virtualized environments were lesser in number. There is data that suggests that more than 50% of the applications in the coming time will be deployed on cloud infrastructures. So we really need to start working on the processes and approaches that will work for this cloud environment. So this again goes back to the operating model that we talked about. So anything that we have in terms of processes need to enable this cloud operating model as well as DevOps model in terms of applications layer. With that, I'll share the details of the products that VMware has come up to support the cloud operating model as well as DevOps model and make it very heterogeneous. So if you look at the applications landscape today, applications in the past were developed using Java frameworks or .NET frameworks. Now currently, applications are developed not only for using those frameworks, but modern frameworks like Ruby, Node.js, and the modern frameworks. So at the same time, earlier in the past, the applications were created only for web environments. Now those applications are also rendered on social media as well as mobile platforms. So there needs to be a heterogeneity that we need for in infrastructure layer as well as for applications layer. So when VMware developed their products, those were the key concepts that we kept in mind. So here what we have is something called application blueprint. Application blueprint is basically application topology, where an architect would put together the middleware layer, what is needed for creating an application. And then that application can later on is late binded with the different deployment profiles, and it can be run on private, public, or hybrid cloud anywhere, or Amazon Web Services. So it's the same structure that is standardized. It comes with configuration. You set up the configurations and settings. It comes with a pre-populated catalog, which has best practices baked in for configurations and settings. You drag and draft your application topology, and create the dependencies in terms of the middleware, and then late bind it to any environment. So it provides standardization, increases reusability, decreases time to delivery, at the same time makes the process of moving an app from development, test, and production much easier and cohesive. So this is what actually the product screenshot looks like. In the center, if you see, there is a demo app that we have created. It's a multi-tier app, clustered app, with all kinds of middleware components that are required for the app, and with the dependencies mapped in it. On this side, we have the OS and VM templates that come pre-populated in the product, and on that side, we have application services and components. And below, we can set up the properties as we need to. So it comes with best practices set in. If you want to customize it, you can customize it at any point in time. And then again, this shows that how we can leverage it at in multiple deployment environments. You can deploy it on Amazon Web Services, public or private cloud. So model ones deploy anywhere, standardized deployments, and makes the application portability much easier. So the next step in terms of application lifecycle is release automation and managing updates. So if there is an update, make a change into code or configuration, or if there is scale out required because of the performance drop, that can be done. It maps the change impact and dependencies and auto-generates the update flow. And that update flow can be applied anywhere in test, stage, and production environment, or in different clouds, wherever the application is running. So this comes pre-configured with pre-integrated with Application Performance Manager, which is the second product within the application management suite that we have. It comes pre-instrumented with the APM, and then because of that, any change, if it causes any problem, it can be measured quickly, and any scale out can be done based on the performance dropped automatically. So when we said we are going to support DevOps, this is what we meant. That application performance management tool, which is built for cloud environments, which can support dynamic environments, and which is meant specifically for giving the KPIs which are meant for application teams. They don't need to have capacity planning. They don't need to worry about the capacity and the health of the infrastructure from that perspective. They just need to get the infrastructure readily available. What they need is just basic understanding if their app is getting enough infrastructure to support. So APM measures application health from three different perspectives: network transactions, application infrastructure, and code. So if there is a code problem, if there is a bad code that was rolled out, it comes pre-configured, so it can bring that code, it can instrument that code before it's deployed, and as soon as if there is a problem, if the code is bad, it immediately alerts. So these are the kind of KPIs, just sample KPIs that an APM tool provides. So so we went through how we need to move from infrastructure to applications. Then Murthy shared with us what it meant to automate the creation of Murthy shared with us that what benefits infrastructure teams get when they automate the process of infrastructure provisioning. Now we'll go through the benefits of automating the process of application management overall, starting from build, deploy, and management further. As I shared with you that when we created the products, we wanted to create them for overall lifecycle management, which was heterogeneous in its approach. It can support any kind of languages, any kind of frameworks. It can support hybrid cloud environments and custom paths, which most of the organizations are trying to move to, and then enables the lifecycle from provisioning to securing to monitoring and updating. So it's heterogeneous. Second, it's tied with performance management. And third, it accelerates the time to market and reduces the cost. So this, again, is just a different picturization of how we reduce the delivery time from infrastructure to app provisioning and then app monitoring. So Murthy, do you want to share the details?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can go through quickly. Basically, the idea of infrastructure provisioning now, instead of having to go through that manual process of those multiple steps, you basically now, using the virtual data centers, can go from an infrastructure request to a fully deployed app in a matter of minutes. And so you've taken what used to be 1 day to 4 weeks and shrunk that down to a matter of minutes, which is an amazing acceleration. And it actually enables you to do this multiple times in a day, multiple times in a week. And there's a lot of benefits in a development environment to being able to do that.
And then next, the same model-driven approach to app provisioning, because we bind it much later and we can deploy it anywhere, and it gives us a canvas to be able to create an application, and it automates the deployment. So it reduces the time from 4 days to 8 weeks to minutes. And this came up with multiple POCs that we have done with our customers, that the applications that took them multiple weeks and which were very, very complex, they could see how it works and what their dependencies are and could provision them much, much faster. And because we have pre-integrated it with performance monitoring, which is specially meant for app teams, it develops that continuous loop from build to deploy to monitor to optimizing it and managing the updates and lifecycle of the app. And what it delivers is reduced time to market, at the same time much enhanced accuracy and higher levels of automation. So this in a nutshell provides what moving from infrastructure to apps will give each team in terms of automating those processes and making them work for the cloud. With that, we will open for any questions.
And actually, we'd love if you could step up to one of the microphones so that we get the questions recorded, since all the sessions will be recorded and available as well. It's made perfect sense. Everyone's got it. How many people, just do a quick survey, I mean, when you think about app deployment in your environment today, are numbers sounding, do they resonate? Like, does it take a week? Does it take a month? You know, what does app deployment look like? How many people does it take a week? More than a week? Less than a week? Yes, it's sort of around that area.
Anybody in minutes? And how many people think it's really important to reduce that time? How many people are from infrastructure teams here? From app teams? Okay.
We can just ask you questions too, that works. No questions at all? It's the last day, isn't it? Everyone's like, oh, I
got to get home now.
Exactly. Okay. Anything else from you? No. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.